This is Stories by Candlelight, and I'm your host, Ellie Whateley. In this series, I'm going to be reading true paranormal stories from all over the web, and hopefully soon from viewer submissions as well. I'll have instructions for that in the show notes, as well as at the end of the video. And of course, if you like this video and want to see more, comment, like, and all that good stuff to let me know. For now, though, turn down the lights, and let me read you a story. There was a place near my house that had a lot of rumors surrounding it. Everything from devil-worshipping cults to vengeful ghosts and river monsters. The area was definitely creepy. A lot of it had been abandoned due to regular flooding, and it was really detached from anything that could be construed as civilization. To make it worse, there was only one road in and out, and in the event of a flash flood, you could actually become trapped there for days. The few locals who stubbornly remained there were very reclusive and would occasionally watch you from their homes until you left. One location there seemed to have more rumors than anything else, an old decrepit rail bridge that passed over the road. Whatever the cause, people suggested, be it multiple suicides, satanic activity, or a gruesome lynching, most people agreed that something evil lingered around there. One story went so far as to say that a demon hung from beneath the trellis like a bat, waiting to swoop down on anyone who strayed too close. I didn't believe any of this, but being a young, intrepid paranormal investigator with way too much time on her hands, I thought I'd check out this creepy place everyone seemed to be talking about. I had a friend who told me he went there multiple times and knew the lay of the land well, so I enlisted him to take me and my boyfriend at the time for a late-night visit. We made an initial pass through, and it was actually pretty unsettling. There was a lot I wanted to check out, but being pressed for time on this night, I decided that with all the rumors, I should focus on the bridge. Unfortunately for me, my driver fully bought into all the hype about the place and refused to park anywhere near it to let me explore. He was absolutely terrified of this bridge. I finally convinced him to stop within sight of it, where he'd let me and my boyfriend out. Then he'd drive around for a bit and come pick us up later. On the annoyingly long walk up to the bridge, we got a good mental map of the area. To one side was a very dense, sort of marshy, wooded area. The other side had a small but relatively steep drop to a field that continued to go progressively lower until it met up with the river. We decided, for some reason, to go the way of the always successful horror movie trope and split up. My boyfriend would take the side with the valley, and I would focus on the roadway and marsh area. Almost immediately, I began to get a strange, foreboding feeling, like I was intruding on something. Shaking it off, I tried to take in the surroundings, look for anywhere lights could reflect, signs of animal dens, the kind of satanic graffiti bored kids will occasionally do to scare other people. All the things that help to give mundane explanations to these sort of things. I glanced up to see where my boyfriend was, and at this point he was easily 50 yards away, working his way towards the river with his flashlight in hand. I was maybe 100 feet from the bridge when I decided to cross the road to check out some thick brush, and I froze in my tracks. I was paralyzed by this overwhelming, aggressive, almost predatory presence. If you've ever been stared down by a growling dog who is just about to come charging at you, it felt like that. My attention immediately snapped to the road just under the bridge, and something came out from the wooded area. It was pure white, humanoid and hairless, with thin, back-swept legs, and it was huge. It had to have been at least 8 feet tall. It was at just the right place for the shadow of the bridge to obscure the upper half of its body, but it seemed to have long arms, a lot of lithe muscle, and a vaguely human-shaped head. It strode out to the center of the road with an unsettling and unnatural grace, almost as if it just glided through reality. It turned, and though I couldn't see the face, I knew it was looking straight at me. Into me. It was like a cold vice clamped down on my heart. I was instantly hit by a strong sense of it. Primal, old, territorial. The air seemed thicker around me from the sheer strength of the feelings, and as it kept growing denser, it almost became suffocating. I felt almost as if it was pushing down on my shoulders, that I was being forced to my knees, and it wanted me to know my place in the food chain, so to speak. I tried to fight against it, but everything was becoming fuzzy and unfocused, all except for the overwhelming feelings of dominance coming from this thing. Then the cold night air rushed into my lungs, and I realized I hadn't been breathing. I was shaken, and as I tried to gather my bearings, I noticed I was down on one knee, in the middle of the road, and the thing was gone. I looked up, and my boyfriend was standing in front of me, trying to get me to snap out of it, obviously frightened by the state he found me in. It took a while for words to come, but I just told him that we needed to get out of there. He told me later that he got a strange feeling from the area I was in and came to check on me, and found me frozen there, completely unresponsive to him, just staring forward in fear. He stayed close to me from that point, holding me and keeping watch while I tried to pull myself together until our friend finally came back. It took a long time for me to bring myself to go back, but when I did, there was nothing there. I went back several times, but I never saw or felt it again. I guess whatever it was decided that it made its point. I was temporarily living in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, managing and working on a large property I own there. My home is in the Los Angeles area, so being away from home was difficult. And what started out as an expected stay of 6 months or less was turning into well over a year. I'd brought both my cats, a male, Max, and my female, Abby. They travel well, and to have someone take care of them for that long was not possible. I ended up renting a nice 2-bedroom unit in a fairly modern townhouse complex on the second of 3 floors. It was at the rear of the property, so it was quiet and overlooked a lovely many-acre reserve park with lots of wildlife for the cats to watch from the balcony. I had brought only bare basics with me, no furniture to speak of. I don't mind roughing it for a short while, therefore I was literally living on the floor. My computer, twin pad mattress, TV, all on the floor. Max, my big lovely male, has had some health issues all his life and was on medication for ongoing digestive system inflammation stemming from inflamed gums, blamed on shelter virus from when I got him at the pound as a kitten. He got a pill every night and would try to avoid me as the time would come for me to push the pill and a meatball into his throat, but typically he would eventually stop trying to evade me and just take the pill so he could get down to the business of snuggling up for the evening. This night in February was bitter cold and snow was on the ground. It was Saturday night. I was up late watching TV since we didn't have to be at my building the next day. My brother had come from California to help me on my property and was already asleep on his bed on the other room. I was in the living room watching TV on the upgrade futon I had reluctantly purchased. Max came over and set his head on my ankles. He seemed quietly odd, and when I made a move to get up to get his pill ready, he dashed away. I couldn't find him. Searched all the cupboards he liked to pull open and hide from me and everything. So as it got later, I decided to fake him out and turn in and wait for him to come to bed and then get up to give him his pill. Worked in the past, figured it would work again. As I was lying quietly, I heard a terrible racket from under the kitchen sink start up, and it was terrifying. Some animal-type sounds and banging about of items. I only had the dish soap, a trash bag, and some empty spray bottles in that big but otherwise empty cabinet. I thought the two cats, Abby always gave Max a hard time, and what was playing often turned into hard-fought battles between the two of them, or fighting and knocking the empty bottles around and all that empty space in that cabinet. It was dreadful sounding, so I jumped up to pull them out, and nothing. No cats, but the bottles were all knocked over and strewn about. Then I saw Max lying on his side in the pantry room, and I knew something was dreadfully wrong. I kept the litter box in there, so I couldn't figure out why he was sleeping in there. I screamed for my brother, and we rushed in 20 miles in the cold in the middle of the night to a 24-hour vet, but Max had died. His heart murmur from the inflammation had been fatal at 9 years old. I was devastated. A few days and nights passed, and I'd given my brother the futon to sleep on as his air mattress had deflated. I was back to living on the thinner mattress pad on the floor. I was mindlessly watching TV, sitting on the mattress with my back on the wall for support, with the one lamp I had on the lowest setting, so it was dim but not dark in the room. Once again, I heard the same horrid racket coming from under the kitchen sink. Now, it was an open floor plan, so the half wall with a countertop bar that separated the kitchen from the living room was merely a few feet away from me. I thought, dang it, Abby, stop making all that noise under the sink. Why are you in there, and what are you doing knocking all those empty plastic bottles about at this time of night? I was just about to get up when I saw Abby pop out from the kitchen like she was being chased into the living area, arch her back, and stare into the kitchen. She wouldn't respond to my voice to come over to me. Then suddenly this creature appeared around the corner from the kitchen and trotted past me on the floor and into the second bedroom where I had my computer and office stuff. I got a good look at it since it was only maybe 2 feet away from me. It was semi-transparent, about the size of a small bulldog. It had a muscular dog's body, like a short, small pit bull, a feline-type head, but not exactly feline. Very short-haired, with a brindle-type striped coat that was very defined. But what really chilled me was that it was wearing a metal-spiked collar. I knew immediately that someone or something had to have placed that on this creature as well. The whole appearance of this thing was menacing. It went by me without so much as looking at me. I sat frozen for a long time in disbelief, thinking over and over, I didn't just see that. Eventually, I got up to look in the bedroom and was not surprised to find that there was no sign of whatever it was that scooted past me. The windows were all closed due to the weather. There's no exit, and the apartment was up on the second floor anyway. I checked the walk-in closet, the bathroom in there. Nothing. I kept Abby close to me for the rest of the night, afraid that the noise in this creature had something to do with Max's death. I never saw it again or heard that noise for the next 3 months before I left Ohio for California. I would have a hard time believing this story from someone else, but it is true in every aspect, and having heard that same noise twice, I can't say it was from some other outside source. I've seen and experienced paranormal things in my life, but this one has a high, unlikable weird factor for me, since I think the creature was there on the night Max died, and then again a few nights later when I did finally see it. I was driving up towards Prescott, Arizona, my girlfriend Becky dozing off in the seat next to me. Rolling the window partially down in the hopes the cool air would keep me alert, I wearily kept driving my Chevy down this narrow highway road with nothing but a thick forested area on the passenger side of me, and mostly open meadowland with a few clumps of trees here and there along the driver's side of the road. I had wanted to leave first thing in the morning on Friday, but Becky was called into work at the last minute, so we ended up leaving at close to 8 o'clock that night. Knowing we had to head back before early Monday, I didn't want to wait until the next day to go and end up losing a good chunk of Saturday to boot. So here I was. It had to be close to at least 10 o'clock by then, driving by the light of my dim headlights with a close to full moon overhead. Full enough to see the open expanses of the passing meadow areas, anyway. when I noticed some smoke or steam coming up from the sides of my car hood. This, in and of itself, was not unusual, as the car was close to 15 years old, dented up a bit, with dimmer than usual lights and hoses that seemed to know the most inopportune times to break. Add to that a radiator that overheated during the summer months or when in use for long periods of time. This being early October, I hadn't given the radiator much thought. It hadn't bothered to act up since August, and as the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. But something sure was putting off plumes under the hood, so I nudged Becky and explained in short that I had to pull over. As I slowed down a bit, Becky rolled down her window and peered out along the edges of the dark wall of pine trees. "Up there," she exclaimed, pointing forward. "About 20 feet or so, there's a dirt shoulder of some kind." Slowing to a crawl, feeling safe at the moment as another car hadn't passed us for a number of miles now, I quickly saw the flat dirt indent, about the length and width of 2 cars, just to the right of the road. The dirt area, much like that whole side of the road, was lined by a knotted mass of trees, giving it the look of a half circle cut down in the middle of the road. I pulled over and turned the car off, leaving the keys hanging from the ignition. With the headlights on, I got out of the car and walked to the front of it, popping the hood. I'd grabbed a flashlight out of the glove box and so proceeded to inspect the damage. Sure enough, the radiator had overheated. I bent down a little to peek between the crack of the hood's bottom edge and the top of the car front to look at Becky through the front windshield. I was going to call out to ask her to grab the gallon bottle of water I kept behind the front seat, there since August at least, so once it cooled a bit I could add water to the radiator. Expecting to see her dozing off or looking toward me, I was surprised to see her staring wide-eyed, mouth agape at the direction of the driver's side window. She was white as a ghost. "What are you doing?" I demanded to know. She kept staring out at the meadowed field, only raising her arms slightly to point in the direction she was looking. "What?" I said, walking back towards the driver's door. As I did, I looked out into the moonlit meadow. I saw a short line of trees in the distant background, a small pine about 20 to 25 feet out, directly in line with the back end of the car, and running about 10 feet from that point forward in a line almost parallel with the road was a short brick wall about 3 feet or so high. The sparse forested area began about 40 feet or so from the wall's edge in either direction of the small meadow. "So," I said, "probably part of an old house or a fence. What's the big deal about the wall?" As I got into the car and shut the door to wait for the innards to cool, she replied, slowly, quietly, "It isn't the brick wall. It's what I saw looking at us over the top of the wall." I turned to her. "What? Quit screwing around." "Fuck you," she said. Then she stopped talking and her gaze drifted past me to the wall. I turned to look. I saw a small, translucent, white, stocky humanoid form just shy of 3 feet tall, its tiny round eyes from this distance appearing as black as night, standing in front of the wall. It slowly took a step or two towards us, its short, chubby arms at its side. I screamed and tried to turn on the flashlight. I knew the batteries were low and sometimes had to jiggle it and turn the cap slightly to get it to work, so in my excitement, I twisted the caps. The batteries flew out and I about dirtied my pants. As the batteries were now rolling under the seat and across the floor of the car, I decided to forget that. I looked up and saw the hood was still up and froze. "He's going back," Becky said. I looked out over the moonlit field again, just in time to see this thing scamper around the side of the wall out of view. As Becky quickly rolled up her car window, I said I was going to shut the hood. To hell with the water. If the radiator didn't burn out, we'd stop down the road and add water then. "Give me the bottle. I'll dump some in the reservoir and shut the hood. You just start the car," Becky replied. As she got out and went to the front, I turned the key. The engine groaned, trying to turn over. I looked from the steering wheel to Becky pouring some water into the reservoir, to the wall and back again. As Becky slammed the hood shut, I looked towards the wall to see the small white head of the ghostly entity peering over the top of it. "Get in the car," I yelled, as the entity's tiny hands gripped the top of the wall and it hoisted itself clean over, landing on its feet, running towards us. Becky jumped in the passenger side, locking her door. She no longer had the bottle, which couldn't have been more than half empty now, but under the circumstances, I didn't ask and I didn't care. I turned the key. Still, it wouldn't catch. "Oh, God," Becky murmured. I didn't want to look. I turned the key again, still just that tired groan. Becky leaned over, reaching past me, hitting my door lock with one hand while rolling the window up with the other. It was one of those older manual window knob roll-up jobs. "Hurry," she said, frightened as she sat back up. With one more turn of the key, the car finally started, and as I punched the accelerator, I looked toward the field. That little thing was only a few feet from the edge of the road. The edge on the other side of the road, thankfully, but close enough that I could see its eyes were indeed dark, empty holes. Its mouth was open now in a wide, leering grin, and I could have sworn it had small, pointed teeth, but it all happened so fast. Its skin or surface seemed to be roiling as the entire entity ran at my car. As we headed down the road, I turned my rearview mirror in such a way I could see it, quite a bit back now, turned away from us, walking alongside the road in the opposite direction. I watched the road ahead. Then Becky screamed. She had been half-turned looking back at the entity too. Now she was bent straight over, her head buried in her hands. I turned my rearview mirror to and fro, but only saw the road. It was gone. We drove another 20 minutes or so, with the car smoking a small portion of the way. The car overheated again as we entered the outskirts of town. Only then would Becky let me stop. As we parked and waited at the first gas station we hit, I asked her what had happened. "I was watching it. It stopped at the edge of the road," she answered. "I know," I said. "I saw it walking away." "Yeah," she answered. "It was walking away, but as it walked away, its head turned all the way around, still grinning, and it watched us drive away." Needless to say, when we headed back, we left at 10 a.m. to be sure we'd get back long before nightfall. Thanks for listening to my new segment. I was kind of nervous making it, so any likes and shares would be greatly appreciated. If you want to submit a personal story for me to read, message me through my Facebook or email, which should be on screen below, with your story, a title, and what name you want me to source you by. But as always, remember, keep believing, because we'll keep listening.